You're listening to Well Met,
a
Hearthstone podcast brought to you by BlizzPro.com.
Well met.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Well Met. We are a Hearthstone podcast brought to you by BlizzPro.com. Centered in Denver, Colorado, I'm John Horstman, and with me, of course, is the dedicated crew. First from Saskatoon, Canada, it is Kevin Hovdestad. Hey, Kev.
Hey, John, man, it feels good to be back. I'm so ready to do this show. There's an incredible amount of stuff we got to get through tonight, and I'm not going to waste any time because we got to fly. So let's go ahead and say hi to, from Kansas City, Mr. J.R. Eldorian Cook.
Just stepping all over my feet over here.
What just happened?
I know, right?
I don't know.
Everything's different. Things have changed.
You threw me off my game already.
I don't know how chat is going to
Didn't
feel.
take much.
Kevin introducing JR there.
Yeah,
they look a little bit salty.
Yeah,
I feel like the rest of the show is just going to be tainted now.
It's all downhill from here.
All downhill. Hey, JR.
Hey, man, I'm glad I could be here, man. The computer issues I suddenly had like 2 minutes before we recorded were pretty stupid. So I had my USB drives just didn't work anymore, so my microphone didn't work. And then right before we hit record, I got a blue screen of all things on Windows 10. Who gets that anymore? Evidently I do. So.
And then you got updates on top of that.
Yeah, and then I got updates, just random updates.
I love it.
Took forever.
What a mess.
Great user experience, you know?
Yeah. So, but I'm here, so we're good to
here.
Go. We got awesome things to talk about.
We
do. Be a pretty good show.
Before we jump in, though, I do want to hear about your guys' week in Hearthstone very briefly. And JR, why don't we talk about you first?
I'm still waiting for that patch to hit, which it's going to in 2 days. Before I really get into it. However, I have been playing really silly, goofy, dumb decks, just to make people upset at the silly things that I do. The latest one was a Hobgoblin Bolster Warrior deck.
Nice.
That sounds like it's designed just to aggravate people. Like it has no purpose other than to aggravate people.
Exactly.
You're playing priest in a non-priest class.
Yeah. It was so much fun. I actually had like several people add me because of it too, because they're like, "What the heck are you playing, you noob?" And I'm like, "Don't care, beat you with my terrible deck." So there you go.
Fair enough.
He loves the Hobgoblin. I love it.
Dude,
Kevin,
I wish Hobgoblin was still in Standard. I love that card so much.
Kevin, how about you, man?
I mean, not a whole lot to say. My ability to play was massively interrupted by the move. It took me 4 or 5 days to kind of get everything into my new place, get all the equipment wired, get everything set up with the new internet, which all of that really was only done by about like Tuesday, Wednesday of this week. So since we last spoke, like I literally took my computer and my desk down after last week's show and spent the next 4 hours moving it into the new condo. That was awful. That was a long night. So now, I mean, I've played a handful of games. I'm sitting at about rank 7, I guess. Just messing around, trying to finish out. I want to finish out my gold shaman before the end of the month if I can. I think I need another 30 or so games to get it, and that'll be 6 gold classes for me. So that's where I'm at, is just crushing as much shaman as I can, and like JR, waiting for the new expansion.
Nice. As for me, I didn't get to do a whole lot of Hearthstone this week. If you are a watcher of the video show, either on YouTube or on Twitch, we've got some new digs this week, and that was what I spent most of my time on this last week. So doing that and finishing up the semester strong. So hopefully we get it the rest of the way here. Finish strong. I'm moving to my new apartment at the end of next week, so it's going to be kind of weird for me in video games coming up, but overall it'll be good. All right, guys. Let's jump into the news.
This week in Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft.
All right, so we got a couple of things we got to cover tonight for you guys. First things first, we obviously kind of already knew, but Blizzard did post to confirm that April 26th is the official launch day for Whispers of the Old Gods. That's this coming Tuesday.
We're done.
It's finally time.
Done.
After the longest gap we've ever had and the longest clap sound that
I
has
know.
ever
I got to
existed.
get a shorter one, man. It's so long.
It's okay. It's okay. So we're happening. We're gonna do it. 134 brand new cards dropping on you guys on Tuesday. It's gonna be a little bit of a mix up, I guess, because it is happening during the current season. So if you're worried about it, I would say, by the time this show hits your ears, you don't have a whole lot of time, but do what you can to make sure you've got your rank where you're happy with, because it's going to be a whole mess those first few days as everybody figures out how to play with the new cards. And if you're playing standard, how to play without all of the old cards.
Yep.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was cool that they're doing with that, though, is by launching it on April 26th, when your rank gets updated, it's for both standard and wild. So you will have that rank for both. So you can choose right off the bat to start on wherever. I had assumed they were just going to go wild, and that would be where it is. But it's kind of cool that they're deciding just to do both. So you can just decide right out of the gate where you want to play while keeping your rank where it's currently at on April 26th.
That's really cool. I had no idea.
Wait. Say that again. I don't think I understood you.
So when April 26th hits, your standard and your wild rank for April will be the same as what you are currently at right now.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. That's fair. All right.
I like it.
Okay.
I mean, there's no way to know which mode people are going to want to play after it launches, so just let people have the option to do either with their current standing. That makes sense.
Well, imagine what that would do to somebody who's like rank 10 legend, and we have to like start over though.
Yeah, well, especially
Right?
considering that, it's your standard rank is the one that matters for HCT points, which
Right.
also, interestingly enough, for the first time, finally, we just got the full list of HCT dates for the rest of the year. So if you haven't seen this already, you can find it on the official Hearthstone blog. We'll throw it in the show notes as well. But all of the dates for when the different point cutoffs are for the different seasons, when all the preliminaries and championships will be for each region, the last call tournaments, etc., all now fully scheduled out and listed over on the site, which is great because up until this point, we kind of knew because there was sort of that rough timetable that Blizzard put out at the start of the year, but it's nice to actually know the absolute specifics of the point cutoffs and dates for all these events, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Interesting too that this coming like May 1st is the cutoff for spring points. So there's going to be kind of a weird, I think, pressure on people to figure out how to be competitive in standard in those first few days right after Old Gods drops, because it is going to affect the point calculation for the spring season.
Well, even the next 2 days are going to be weird as well. It's going to be a really weird like final week for people on the ladder right now.
Gonna separate the boys from the men, that's for sure. Or women, or
The children.
Whatever.
Think of the children.
all of us. It's going to separate the baby us's from the full grown us's, is what I meant
like
to
it.
say. We also had a patch. I literally am so stressed out right now because literally everything dropped like 2 hours before the show.
Yes, it did. So the new patch, did officially come out today. It's only out at this point on PC, hasn't hit any of the other platforms yet, but it's the patch that includes the classic and basic card nerfs, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. It also included some interesting changes that I don't think we were expecting per se. Minor things like changes to the filters for the collection manager, updates to the deck recipes, stuff like that. But we've got the card backs for the next 3 months. So Shadow Moon Valley is the card back for May, Zuldrak is the card back for June, and Half Hill is the card back for July. All of those in that blog, which you can check out on the official Hearthstone site as well. They've changed the arena reward system again, and now your arena reward is an expansion, a card pack from the most recently released expansion. So you're generally always going to see the most recent card set again. like they did back in the day when they first introduced GVG. They went to the random rotation for a while, and now we're back to no, it's just the most recent set. And they also said, additionally, you are slightly more likely to receive a second card pack from a different standard set, which is kind of neat. So, all of that, as well as the new WoW emote. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I think it's kind of ridiculous.
Evidently, sorry is just nerfed. They decided to nerf Canada and took out the sorry.
This is an outrage to my people. We will not stand for this.
So have they given any clarification as to why that's changed? Or just,
not at all.
Let's change it.
I mean, it's cool that they mixed it up. It obviously means they had to bring in, all the VO people to do new work, that kind of stuff, which is cool. But I have no idea why they changed it. There was no indication given. Yeah, but I think
meta wasn't strong enough, probably.
Apparently. Now you can say, that's incredible, as you kill them.
Yep.
It's great.
Or a top deck something, that's incredible. I love it.
Yeah. Do you guys want to talk about these nerfs, though? I feel like we got to
Oh my god. We are just going straight through this because we need to get through it quick. So let's go ahead and talk about these nerfs. So Blizzard has released all of the nerfs that are going to be coming up with the standard rotation and just pushed the patch live today. So where we're at right now is 12 nerfs, right? We got 12.
Nerfs, yeah.
And we're going to start up with Druid because, man, Druid got hammered really hard. So first, Ancient of Lore, JR. Take us through the Ancient of Lore nerf, if you would, please.
Yeah, so Ancient of Lore was a very popular Druid card. That was a 7 mana 5/5. It was a choose one. You got to either draw 2 cards or gain 5 life. And that has been changed now. It's the same cost and everything. The only thing that's been changed is now you only draw 1 card instead of 2, which makes this card definitely not as good anymore, and gives you a lot of other options that you might want to play with in your deck now. This card may not get seen as much in Druid instead of being the staple that it was, especially with something like Azure Drake, which you can play on turn 5 and get the same effect. That can be something that will likely be seen a lot more than Ancient of Lore now. So,
all right. What do you think about this one, Kev? Oh, man. We're on the same wavelength here. I like this. This is going to be a good show.
It's going to be fun. I think this was a totally mandatory change. I don't love it, obviously, because I did think that Ancient of Lore was a really exciting card and presented a lot of cool choices. But the reality was that for 7 mana, there was never going to be a reason not to run Ancient of Lore. And that's the problem, right? Across the board, a lot of the changes that were being made were to cards where you had no reason not to consider an alternative, right? Now, you have to make a real choice, I think, when you compare Ancient of Lore to Ancient of War or any of the other possible things that you could include for 7 mana in a Druid deck. Whereas previously, there was really no good argument against Ancient of Lore. Now, there are some people who I think have a legitimate point in saying maybe it could have been slightly less of an issue because they've already changed so much other stuff in Druid, and you can't fish up your 2-card combo. You can't fish up a ton of things to close out a game the same way. But honestly, I like this. I think the card is still very playable. I think people are still going to run it, but I think they're going to have to think a little harder about whether or not it's this card or something else, or maybe a 1 of instead of always 2 in every Druid deck, regardless of archetype.
I think mathematically, though, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, a vanilla 5/5 is about 5 mana. That makes sense. That's, I think, a good costing for it. Drawing 2 cards on average is what? That's Arcane Intellect, which is 3.
Arcane Intellect for 3, yeah.
So you're getting that, plus you're getting a choice to heal if you're playing against something that is a bit more aggressive and in your face. And so, I mean, it makes sense. It doesn't feel good. I mean, what do you have left now for card draw? Nourish? And so Druid is still really slim again on a card draw, but it makes sense because you're right. even at 7 mana, the ability to fish up your powerful cards, especially with ramp and things like that, card draw is a super dangerous thing in Druid, and so it makes a lot of sense. I've played a lot of Druid, but I don't, I think it makes sense. I wish it wasn't, just because I like Druid, and Ancient of Lore is one of my favorite cards to play in Druid, but I think overall it makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about this next one here. So, Kevin, I'm not letting you do this one.
Oh, really?
You're going to sit out here. So we're going to talk about Force of Nature.
Rude.
So Force of Nature now reads, oh my gosh, it's way too small on my screen. Summon 3 2/2 Treants, and it's now 5 mana instead of 6. So no charge. They don't die at the end of the turn and cost 1 less. JR, tell us what you think about this nerf.
I mean, a lot of people saw this coming. There's a lot of debate on if this card would get nerfed or if Savage Roar would get nerfed. Either way, the combo that we know it was going to get hit at one point or the other. And in this case, they chose Force of Nature. And I'm pretty sure the whole reason is and you'll see this a lot with the other cards that got nerfed in this as well, as they're really taken against Charge, because Charge can just, and we said it before, Charge can just allow you to do a lot of things on your turn without your opponent being able to respond. And because of Charge, it forces them to make design decisions that they may not want to make. Like, they might have an awesome card that they want to do, but something like Force of Nature or a card with Charge is going to make that card way overpowered. So this gives them ability to open up their design space a little bit. So
All right.
I know Kevin has a lot more to say about this, so.
Oh, God.
And some bragging.
I'll be brief. I think this was the correct decision. I actually like that they reduced the cost on it and made it a little bit more attractive to people who might want to use it in tandem with some of the other Druid buff style cards, right? This now fits really well with Power of the Wild. It fits really well with lots of the other stuff that Druid might want to do. Soul of the Forest now actually makes sense to play behind this. In general, I think there's still a combo element to playing Force of Nature, because it's not tokens, right? It's not summoning a bunch of wisps. It's got a different application than a lot of the other cards. And Savage Roar still being in play makes a lot of other things continue to be viable. I think, will see people who try to make a variant of combo Druid work, but they're going to do it using Druid of the Claw and Druid of the Saber. And I think they're going to try and accomplish something similar, because there are still charge cards out there. It's no longer a 2-card combo, but you can still do a lot of the same things because there's still the ability to access charge. So on the whole, I'm really happy with this. I'm glad that Druid gets to retain Savage Roar as a win condition, because to go through and look at Druid on the whole and say, how does Druid win a game? Really and truthfully, they're heavily dependent on having some way to use whatever they've been able to build as a board to close out the game. They don't have the adequate removal to contest otherwise. They don't have any spell-based finishers. You don't see anybody running spell power Druid and killing their opponent with Starfire. It's just not efficient.
We've all seen the Malagos Moonfire Druid. Not amazing, but to be fair, coming in standard, you never know. It might come right on back in and be amazing again.
It's hard to say, but on the whole, I think this was a really good change, and I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because you can't rate it directly as like a 6/6 body for 5, because it's not. It's 3 2/2 bodies, much more susceptible to board clear, and isn't gonna really. It's gonna do a lot better against aggro. Do you guys anticipate Savage Roar still being the primary win condition for Druid?
Savage Roar is still going to be very good, in my opinion, and still going to be, it's still going to make Druid a pretty good class to play. A lot of people think Druid is dead because of these nerfs, but I think Druid's still going to be in a very good place, and Savage Roar is going to be the reason for that.
I want the Beast Druid.
The thing with Savage Roar, right, was that before, because of combo, you knew that you could play that card, and it was 8 damage for 3 mana, which was always really scary. Now, I would guess that the average play of Savage Roar will be worth 4 to 6, because you're not going to be able to get 3 bodies to stick on the board. And if you can get 3 bodies to stick on the board, your opponent has other problems. So really, it's just going to do a little less damage than it used to. And Druid is going to have to think a lot more about raw efficiency, right? Which is part of why when we were talking about Ancient of Lore, I think it was going to go away anyways because it's too slow on 7 when you can't combo your way out of the game. You need something that contests the board better on 7 than a 5/5 body now that you don't have 3 charge minions to close out with.
Yeah, Ramp Druid and Token Druid are gonna both be pretty good, in my opinion, in the meta. So
yep,
I think it definitely remains to be seen how hard up Druid will be for card draw, because I mean that's the reason why you would run Ancient of Lore at this point if they really need that draw. And is it better than Azure Drake or 2 Azure Drakes or even like Loot Hoarders or other cards like that draw cards? Or even Nourish, heck, who knows? So we'll have to wait and see on that one. Let's talk about Keeper of the Grove, shall we, Kevin?
Yeah, this is something that we saw like a thematic change occur basically across the whole game. Blizzard reevaluated the silence mechanic. And silence has been something they've been really critical of basically since they first introduced it. They've never added an offensive silence back into the game, with notable exception of Light's Champion, which no one plays because it only silences demons. And Wailing Soul is the only other silence card that's ever been introduced and is rotating out of standard. So they went through and they did a hard pass on all of the silence cards, and most of them got changed. Keeper of the Grove is one of the big ones here. It's the exact same card as it was before. 4 mana. You can choose between 2 damage or a silence, but they reduced it to 2 attack and 2 health. I don't think this is a bad change. I think this is still an incredibly powerful, incredibly flexible card. The reality was that this minion was honestly, on average, probably going 3 for 1 for its mana cost used against small bodies, right? You could drop that 2 damage onto a Knife Juggler, trade the body into another 2-drop, and then trade again into yet another minion. It was really powerful to the point of basically being, again, totally deleterious to your ability to make a choice on 4. You always ran this card. Now, and we'll talk about this more with one of the next nerfs as well, but now, if what you're after is a silence on 4, you're going to see a lot of people swing to Spellbreaker, which is cool because Spellbreaker has really honestly never been played and now looks to be the most attractive silence card in the whole game. And I think that was very intentional on Blizzard's part. I think they looked at it and said, a silence that costs 4 mana feels okay, and they wanted to do something that pushed that neutral silence back that had the aggressive stat block as opposed to the defensive stat block on Keeper of the Grove. So now you can keep playing Keeper of the Grove if you want the ability to make that choice, or if you're running cards that facilitate choose one like Fandral. But in general, if all you're after is a silence on 4, you won't play Keeper anymore. And I think that was the whole goal of this entire process. JR.
Yeah, I don't see this card hardly ever getting played anymore. Even with Fandral, it's not a good card at all. Spellbreaker for 4 mana. If you want to silence, you're going to do that. If you want something that does 2 damage, you're going to play Living Roots. So there's just better options right now to play rather than this. 4 mana 2/2, even with the silence ability, when you can silence with something else with a better body, it's just a no-brainer to me.
I think, the choose one mechanic definitely does have some value, but going on to the next card, Ironbeak Owl has been changed to cost 1 more. This nerf makes a lot more sense. Now, if Ironbeak Owl stayed at 2 mana, this nerf would make no sense to me at all. There's no way the ability to choose one and do 2 damage is worth 1 health, and the ability to do 1 health and 2 more mana. It just doesn't make any sense. But with the new changes, they're making it very clear that you shouldn't be able to easily combo out strong-bodied minions and silence your opponent's minions. The deal 2 damage thing. I don't really know how valuable that is overall. I mean, it's good. But in the end, most of the nerf had to come from this silence, and I think it makes a lot of sense with this new direction that Blizzard seems to be taking of let the players play their cards, play their powerful cards, and may the best player who has the strongest board and is able to kind of outmaneuver its opponent win, rather than the one who happens to have a BGH in hand or a clutch silence for cheap and still be able to put out an 8 mana card on turn 10, be the one who wins. So I think it makes a lot of sense. What else do you guys think about this Ironbeak Owl nerf?
I mean, I think it's perfect, honestly. Across the board now, I don't think there's a good argument to be made for running any silence in the game outside of Priest other than Spellbreaker, which is a really positive change for the game as a whole, because it means there's not a lot of minions you would silence in the early game anyways, right? So a low-cost silence has always just been a convenient way to set up something else you want to do with that turn. In general, the fact that silence comes with a body behind it has always been kind of awful, right? It's awful to play against. It feels really bad when it happens to you. It allows you to close out games in a scary way. This is a huge change, particularly for Hunter, because that's the only class really left where Ironbeak Owl might make sense. And it's really going to look like you probably can't afford to play a 2-1 for 3 beast to get a silence in a really aggressive Hunter deck. Like, it's just too expensive. So on the whole, I mean, I imagine there will still be people who will play Owl because it's the cheapest silence with a body. And it's the only cheap neutral silence with a body. But across the board, I think this card just got basically 1-to-1 replaced by Spellbreaker, which feels very intentional. Like, when you stop and you think that they changed all of the other silences except for some of the class-specific ones and Spellbreaker, they're very clearly pushing Spellbreaker.
What do you think, JR?
I think Ironbeak Owl, it was something that you played, and then you played something big to go along with it to, go against whatever your opponent is doing. I think Ironbeak Owl will still see some play just because of that. You just won't get the as powerful turn as you could have before, because that 1 mana is actually a pretty big deal. I could see people making the decision to do Spellbreaker or Owl depending on what they're wanting to do. 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to see Spellbreaker rather than Owl. But I can see potential to still see the card get played. So,
yeah, this one I think it's really tough because, at the end of the day, how many minions are we going to be silencing? The more and more new cards that we're seeing right now is there's a lot of big, scary cards coming out. And I hope that Blizzard has internally tested this and decided that it's better to play minions than to silence the existing ones. But that's ultimately going to be what decides if this card gets played. Obviously, Spellbreaker, you get +2 attack and +2 health for 1 more mana. And so it seems to make a lot of sense from that respect. But at the same time, if you need silence, especially if you need, you can still silence something and throw down an Ancient of War or an Antonitis or something like that. So there's a lot of good cards that are going to sit in the 7 slot that you can still combo this with and have a strong turn. But it's definitely not nearly as versatile.
I mean, if you're an aggro deck, this an Ironbeak Owl, I think, looks more favorable than a Spellbreaker, just for the fact that you're using that solely for the silence and to get something else to hit face or something like that, and you're not looking as much at the body itself.
Yeah.
In fairness, though, with all the stuff that's rotating out in Standard, this is probably more significant in Wild than it is in Standard. Really, there's not as many things where you want to silence them and then remove them, or silence them in lieu of removing them. Most of the stuff, to John's point, that's coming out in the new expansion and in general the way the game is going to be played is probably going to err on the side of you need to hard remove these targets. You can't afford to silence and ignore them. You have to actually get them off the board. Silence felt super mandatory in a world where you knew that everyone and their puppy dog was going to be running Sludge Belcher. But that's really not a problem anymore. The number of things that I would feel good about getting a silence onto and reducing the value of that particular card by silencing it is drastically lower in Standard than it was up to this point.
Yeah. Mainly taunt stuff, and even then,
yep,
it's kind of hard to spend 3 mana on that for sure. All right, let's talk about BGH. BGH saw the nerf bat as well. And Kevin, I'll let you take this one. Long live BGH. The BGH is dead.
Well, dead in a certain respect, right? So, Big Game Hunter has had its cost increased from 3 to 5. There was a lot of conversation about this. There were a lot of people who said this was one of the cards that needed to change. And if you go back and you look at some of the articles that people wrote or things that people put out, pros were surveyed, and I think it was maybe Raynad or someone did one for PC Gamer where he said this should be changed to destroy a dragon or something to that effect. But realistically speaking, the whole game, like the entire design of the game, was always balanced around this idea that you would be able to delete a 7 or higher attack minion using something like this. What they wanted it to be was they wanted it to be a tech card. They wanted it to be that same 3 mana slot where you might choose Blood Knight when you see a lot of people using Divine Shield. And instead what it became was it became a mandatory answer to a mandatory minion in Dr. Boom. With Dr. Boom rotating out, maybe BGH didn't need to be changed. But I think, honestly, this is really healthy for the game. I think this promotes playing for the board. I think it reduces the ability for you to have an immensely powerful swing turn where you delete something that someone has paid 7, 8, 9, 10 mana to get on the board with your 3 mana minion that also leaves behind a totally realistic costed body for 3 mana, and then also be able to play your own 6, 7 mana minion on top of that. This feels really good. Even now, honestly, I was playing a little bit of Shaman right before the show. I still have a BGH in that deck. The cost of 5 really doesn't change the fact that it's still a huge swing turn. It just changes what you can do with the rest of that turn. And I think this is great. I think it makes it so that you don't run BGH as an emergency tempo play when your opponent doesn't play anything over a 7 attack. I think there's going to be decks where no one runs big minions because they're trying to avoid stuff like BGH. And that actually turns it back into a tech card, which is great. I 100% think this is the best change they made in all of these nerfs.
In the end, BGH just felt bad, and I think that was the big thing. It wasn't really that it was a bad card, and even maybe it wasn't so fairly costed, but so much of the game relied on you run one copy of BGH, and you hope your opponent doesn't have it when you play that down, and it just wasn't fun to play around. That's not the fun guessing of what does my opponent have in his hand right now. Instead, it's like well, cool, if this, if he has BGH, I lose, and if he doesn't, I win. And with this one, he's like, I can play something on turn 7, and he can BGH it, but he's only got 2 mana left versus 4 mana in a huge swing turn, right? And so I really do think that this is a really good really good change. And JR, last thoughts.
Yeah, you're still going to see Big Game Hunter get used. I don't think it was a complete answer to Dr. Boom, like Kevin said, because it has been an answer to lots of other decks well before GVG even came to play. It was used to counter Ragnaros, which was really popular for a while. It was used to counter any kind of handlock deck or any kind of giant deck for a while. Dr. Boom definitely made it more so than those others, but making it 5 mana means you can drop this down, kill a giant or something like that, still have that removal in play, but by making it 5 mana, it doesn't allow you to get a huge tempo swing, which you are currently getting in the game with it being 3 mana. Because if you turn 8 you drop down let's say Ragnaros, or turn 7 you drop down Dr. Boom, and your opponent on turn 8 then plays BGH in a 5 mana minion, they have a huge tempo swing because they just took out your big minion, and they have 2 fairly hefty minions in regard to that. So by making it 5 mana, it definitely balances out the game a little bit more, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And
They wanted it to be a tech choice, not an auto include, and honestly, it's still such an incredible tempo swing that I think most people playing any kind of control style deck will still run it as a one of. Mid range might have to give it up and run other kinds of removal, but there's no way this card isn't still going to see play because it's so powerful if you get the value off of it. It's just now you don't want to play it when you don't get the value off of it. And that, to me, is a totally acceptable way to just move the needle, get people playing big minions again, change the meta up. It feels really bad when you compare it to most of the other tech cards. Like, you can still play a mind control tech on 3 and not feel bad about the 3/3 body because sometimes you're not going to get value off of that battle cry. But they needed to do this because of the direction the game has gone. One way or the other, this had to happen eventually.
Either way, I'm happy. I'm happy they didn't remove the mechanic completely.
Agreed.
I was
100%
afraid
agree.
they were going to do that.
The last thing I'll say before we jump onto this last page of nerfs here is basically the way that this ends up mathing out is, unless you have a mana cheat in some respect, to remove a 7 cost minion is going to cost at least 50% of your mana, if not more. And I think that's a good change. And it should be, you know. All right, here we go. All right, last couple class changes here. Hunter's Mark has been changed from being 0 mana to 1 mana. So now it's 1 mana, change the minion's health to 1. I like it. In the end, it's not a super hard nerf bat, but it especially in aggro and face hunter, if he has that Hunter's Mark and on turn 5, he can put out so much damage and then basically for free remove whatever you have on the board with one of his cheap minions. Felt awful, but at the same time, I think it still remains playable. What do you think, JR?
Yeah, you'll still see it get played. Out of all the nerfs, this one surprised me the most, though, because I didn't see Hunter's Mark as a problem to begin with, but evidently Blizzard did, and they wanted to go the route of basically Soulfire by making it from a 0 mana spell to a 1 mana spell. And they're probably just being more careful with those 0 mana spells, and that's why they did it this way. Overall, I don't think it's going to really change the game in any drastic way.
Kev?
Yeah. I think it's healthy. I think it's a good change. I think when you look at what a 0 cost spell should be able to do, you see a lot of minor effects that can be really good or work really well in tandem with something else. But this was maybe just a hair too much. Like being able to get rid of... We just finished talking about why BGH had to be more expensive to allow you to remove a big minion. Exactly the same problem. There's no way that anyone would feel good about someone being able to Hunter's Mark Arcane Shot the 10 drop their opponent put down the previous turn and get it out of play that easily. What they should have to do is they should have to clear the board and be able to focus a deadly shot or, you know, whatever else, right? Removal should not be that inexpensive. And this has been, again, something that they've been very consistent with, is they want removal to look a little bit like it's a decision, not a guaranteed choice. Hunter's Mark was one of the best answers to a lot of things that were really popular in the meta, like Secret Paladin, for example, and still, you know, you didn't see a lot of it, but I think in Old Gods and the Standard and onward, there's going to be so many more big minions landing in the late game that making this into a 1 cost spell is just enough of a tweak that you're not going to feel like you got absolutely screwed by what was going on with your opponent's hand. And right. So good. Like, I'm all for it.
All right. Let's go ahead and jump into the next card. And cut. Okay, I have to adjust something. There's something a little bit wonky going up with audio. I'm going to fix it really quick. It's going to take 20 seconds.
Sure.
The podcast just got nerfed.
Costs more mana now. And this next nerf is one of the most interesting ones.
It's most controversial.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'll talk about it, but
all right, I'm trying to test this again. Yep, sounds good. Okay.
Most controversial, but I think people are overreacting a bit.
I think they'll be totally fine with it in a year, but
right,
they're getting mad about it now.
Kilogram hours at strike 2. All right. JR, go ahead and tell us about this nerf to Rogue, will you please?
Yeah, so one of the most controversial nerfs came from Blade Fury, which went from a 2 mana spell that you destroyed your weapon and then did that damage to your opponent's minions in their face. Now, Blade Fury costs 4 mana and destroys your weapon and only does its damage to all enemy minions. So this is the most controversial one because of the simple fact that it completely kills Oil Rogue in Wild. Oil Rogue was not going to be a thing in Standard because Tinker sharp sword or whatever it's called is rotating out. But this does take away a pretty significant AoE spell to Rogue. And the reason why they did this one the way that they did is because if you had a card like Tinker's Sharpsword or whatever it's called, I think that's right.
Close enough.
Yeah. It just breaks the game in a way. It makes it too powerful. You can't make future weapons that powerful because of this card, because it would be way too good. And this is in line with a nerf they did back in beta with Druid to Savagery, which did something very, very similar, where it would hit face and minions and do damage based on what the power was that your hero had for attack. And that was way too powerful, especially with spell power. And Rogue is seeing kind of the same thing at this point. And a lot of people are upset because they claim it's going to make Rogue a trash tier class now. But I think Rogue's going to actually be in a pretty good place with Whispers of the Old Gods. I think there's some really good cards and some really good temporal rogue ideas out there that has potential to be very good in standard. And I think here in probably a month or so, people are going to forget about this nerf, honestly.
Kev, what do you think?
I think it's hilarious that the only word that JR can't remember from Tinker's Sharpsword Oil is the oil word for oil rogue. But outside of that, I think he nailed it, honestly. Blade Flurry had some really deleterious effects on how Blizzard was balancing weapons and weapon buffs. And if you look at raw cost, right, to do, say, 4 damage to a board, right, to clear minions out the same way as a Flame Strike, Rogue could do it for less than any other class in the game, in theory. And they got the benefit of being able to do all that damage to your opponent's face as well, which seems really kind of insane when you stop and think about it. It's also problematic in the sense that it was a lot of damage in a single turn, which is something that Blizzard has been very adamant about trying to solve, is the amount of damage you can deal to your opponent's hero in a single turn. So pretty much across the board, I think this is a really healthy change for the game. I think people are mad because the expectation that this nerf created was we were going to see immediately something that Blizzard has held back and not been able to do because of Blade Flurry, and we didn't get that card in Whispers of the Old Gods. And I think that's really the source of people's malcontent right now, is where's my super powerful weapon that I couldn't have prior to Blade Flurry? Well, you probably get it in the next set, guys. Like that's how this is going to work. And frankly, Rogue has been really awful for a long time because no one has been trying to innovate. No one's been trying to do anything clever. Rogue is going to be one of, I think, the biggest beneficiaries of the changes to silence in the game. I think they're going to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of the change to BGH. I think you're going to see really cool tempo Rogue styles. I think you're going to see cards that have a lot of mid and late game potential from Rogue make a big comeback, because finally, for the first time in the history of the game, you're not just going to see people trying to iterate on Miracle Rogue or Oil Rogue to just have a big spell-based finisher. Tempo and board-driven Rogue is actually going to be the way that the game should be played, was meant to be played, and will be played.
Yeah, I think what hurt Rogue the most, ever since Goblins versus Gnomes, has been the sticky minions. Those are rotating out, and because of that, Rogue is going to end up being better. And I think people will be surprised by that. I don't... And plus, Rogue is one of those classes that like pro players can play really, really well. And that legendary status, it tends to do fairly well. Even, it's been Oil Rogue mostly, but there's a lot of really good Rogue players out there. And I think we're going to see Rogue in a decent spot. I don't know if it's going to be top tier yet or not. It might take another expansion, but I don't think it's going to be as bad as people say.
As Pillbot says in the chat, I'm so upset about this nerf. I'm going to have to go back and play Hearthstone on my vanilla servers to get over the devastation of this nerf. No, makes perfect sense. I'm right with you guys. Oh, come on. It was pretty funny. It makes a lot of sense. I was a little bit surprised that they nerfed it so hard, that they nerfed the cost and the fact that it can't do damage for heroes to heroes. Like, I thought they would have done one or the other, but okay. I guess that's fine. Yeah. All right. We got one more page of nerfs left. No, we don't. We have two. Oh my God. So many nerfs. Kevin, talk to us about Knife Juggler.
Yeah, another nerf that I think nobody was really surprised by. This is a card that people felt needed to be changed for a variety of reasons. So the old Knife Juggler was the 3/2 2-cost minion that did one damage to a random target every time you summoned a minion. Exact same effect, but it's now a 2/2 for 2. And I think that's honestly probably fine. This now takes this minion to a place where there's tons of stuff on 2 that trades very efficiently against a 2/2 body. So it needs to have really, really immediate impact. And there's very little that combos into it the way it used to. There's a couple of very specific synergies that will still exist. Knife Juggler and Unleash the Hounds, that sort of thing. But in general, I don't think you're going to see anywhere near as much Knife Juggler as you did prior to this nerf. And I don't think you would have even if they hadn't changed it. But I'm glad they did, because I think it will just, again, for much the same reason as how we were talking about the Keeper of the Grove change, or even maybe BGH. It's just their Blizzard's way of saying, you know what? No, try other things. Go do something else. This card has seen a ton of play. It's been massively popular for 3 years. Do something different. And I know there are people who are not happy with that. I know there are people who would rather that Blizzard not try to guide the game that way and force people into or out of specific archetypes, but that's their job, and that's what's going to be good for the game in the long run. So I'm happy with it. If anything, I know there are people who were hoping this change might go a little further. Maybe they would change the card text to say it could only hit an opposing minion, not go face, something like that, which in some respects actually would have been a buff for certain styles of decks. But on the whole, I'm happy with it. I think it's great. John?
Yes, Senator. I think that's a good call.
I think most people wanted to see it change where you had to play a card for it to activate, instead of tokens activating it, or cards that were summoned activating it. Personally, I'm a big fan of the mechanic itself that it already has, so I'm glad to not see it get nerfed. So making it a 2/2 instead of a 3/2, it's fine in my book. Plus, we get to hear Raynad still complain about it.
Or Matt's worth its weight in gold.
Yes.
Yes, it is. All right, let's go on to this next one here. Leper Gnome changed. Used to read, it's a 1 mana, 2 attack, 1 health minion, raids Death Rattle, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. Absolute staple in just about every aggro and face deck. Sees the nerf bat to only have 1 attack now instead of 2. Makes perfect sense. I mean, you basically guaranteed, unless they cleared it with a hero power like a Fire Blast or something like that, basically guaranteed 4 damage at least for 2 mana, and that 2 of those damage could clear off a minion or something like that and give you a little bit extra time in the early turns. So I think it makes total sense. 1/1 for 1 seems super fair. Honestly, this is not a controversial nerf, and I don't think a lot of people are talking about, but I think this is one of the most important nerfs when it comes to the type of gameplay that Blizzard is promoting for their new game. And I think that, in the past, it used to kind of be find all the minions that are just a little bit overcosted for what they are, or undercosted for what they are, throw it into a deck and call it face. And this is going to start to make that look a little bit fair. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think you hit all everything about that card. The only thing I would add is there's the 9/7 legendary that produces these guys when he gets hit.
Thermoplug, yeah.
Thermoplug is an indirect nerf to that card, which never saw play anyway. But there are a lot of people really upset that they're not going to get the full amount of dust by uncrafting that card, even though it's an indirect nerf to it, which I don't think they should anyway, and that's fine. But I just think it's some interesting controversy around that this card, by nerfing it, did affect another card indirectly and made it worse.
Sure, it's also a mounted raptor nerf and a whole bunch of, whatever, who cares? It's an unstable portal nerf if you want to go there, but no, we're not going to do that. I think this is great. I think there's still a ton of early game aggro minions, and you're going to see people continue to play abusive sergeant, people maybe in the classes that use aggro cards. Maybe this is a reason for Face Hunter to try Brave Archer. Maybe it's a reason for Face Hunter to use Fiery Bat instead, right? Like there's lots of stuff that still trades up on one. I'm glad that, again, it'll just introduce some variety. There was nothing that was ever going to be better than Leper Gnome on one for pure aggro purposes unless they changed Leper Gnome. So, because you couldn't print a better Leper Gnome. So at this point, yeah, I'm totally thrilled that this card got modified the way it did. And I hope that they continue to do this kind of thing in the future if there's still aggro cards that see that volume of play for that reason.
Cool. All right, let's continue to trudge through these neutral nerfs here. And I don't know, Kevin, is it your turn? You want to tell us about this one?
Sure. So Arcane Golem, RIP, has been totally dumpstered. Totally unplayable now. Used to be a 4 mana, 2 health minion with charge that gave your opponent a mana crystal. It is now a 4 health, 4 attack minion, but doesn't have charge. Still costs 3, still gives your opponent a mana crystal. There's no world ever where giving your opponent a ramp effect is worth the extra 1 hit point or 1 attack on a minion. Not a chance. Like this card went from a totally mandatory part of a ton of combo decks and a big part of how certain styles of Warlock and stuff like that closed games out to never gonna get played again. And great, that's fine. There's still ways to play aggro cards on 3. You've still got Wolf Rider, whatever else. If you need a charge body that has a higher attack value, there's still Leroy. There's still things that have always felt reasonably balanced. But this card was always just being held back and used as part of nasty combos that sucked and no one wanted to play against. And now it's gone, and you will probably never see this card played ever again. Have I missed anything?
On the flip side of that, it makes the new mage card that's in Whispers of the Old Gods, Faceless Summoner, which summons a random 3-cost minion a little bit better. Because now you have a potential... I mean, yeah, you don't get the 4-2 with charge. Now you have a potential to get a 4-4, and then there's a lot of other really good 3-cost cards on there. So...
Yeah, I don't know.
If we
I think getting the
deep,
charge minion probably was better.
If we want to dig
like,
deep,
strictest
yeah.
basis. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, at least you don't lose a mana crystal when it comes from that. The only thing I will say is I think Mukla at this point is strictly better. A 5 mana, or 3 mana, 5/5. That gives your opponent. I would much rather have my opponent have to spend 2 mana to give its minions +2/+2 than to give him a mana crystal permanently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So Arcane Golem sucks. Let's go to the next one. Molten Giant. JR, tell us about the new Molten Giant change.
So Molten Giant was a 20 mana card. It's 8/8. It costs 1 less for each damage your hero has taken, which is the weirdest way of wording that when it was really reduced cost for where you're at in life, really. But it goes from 20 to 25. So no longer are you going as a handlock, or there's not going to be a handlock anymore because of this change. But no longer will you see Molten Giant come down for free when you're at 10 life. It can now only come down for free when you're at 5 life. So this card, an 8/8, when you're at 10 life, will now cost you 5 mana, which makes it significantly worse and probably won't see play again.
By significantly worse, you mean sucks, right? Because this card sucks now. I mean, almost any class from almost any range can do 5 damage in one shape or form, except for like Priest, I guess, kind of sometimes. I don't know. I part of me loves this change because, well, it means that, you know, that I don't get stymied at like 11 or 12 at the same time. And a lot of cards too, like when Handlock is popular, you see a lot more combo decks, the ability to go from 15 to 0, 16 to 0. And especially with the nerfs to those combo. Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Pretty much across the board, I think this was a healthy change for the game. They wanted to eliminate that style of play, especially when they eliminated, like in the blog, they basically said when they've eliminated so many of the potential counters to it with all of the charge minions that are going away, it makes sense that the cost was increased. The one notable thing I did want to point out, and most people have already correctly identified this themselves, is this makes Molten Giant actually unplayable after you've played Jiraxis. You cannot actually play a Molten Giant at all post Jiraxis. And that interaction in particular, I think, is really what kills the handlock concept outright. So I like it. Honestly, I think there's probably ways to still play this card because getting an 8/8 out for 5 is just as good as Fel Reaver was. And Fel Reaver saw play in aggro decks.
Yeah, but you're at 5 life.
No, playing it at 5, you'd be at 10, right? So, I mean, there's still, I think, if you can get an 8/8 body down for less than 8, there's reasons to do that in certain circumstances. Is this card the best way to do that anymore? Maybe not. And that's probably, again, a good thing. It gives people some choices. I'm okay with it.
If I'm at 10 life and I have 5 mana, there are better cards out there that I will gladly play.
I agree. I think people will still try to make it work, but I'm glad that the alternatives are more enticing now.
And I feel like the same thing as BGH applies here, that this card just felt bad to play against. Like at the end of the day, you're winning. And I'm all for like choice of like, don't just play everything that lights up green and be the most mana efficient as possible. Sometimes it's correct to wait. Sometimes it's correct to not play all your mana. But at the same time, especially against handlock, it's always, again, well, if they have Molten Giant, I'm screwed. And if they don't, we win. And I think my chances are a little bit higher. So I'm going to do that, even though I know exactly what he could have. And I really don't have ways to play around that. And it just kind of felt bad. So I think it makes sense. Even just from a game design perspective, I don't necessarily think it was imbalanced. Just thought it was kind of a crappy feeling to play against.
I will be happy to never again see Molten Giant, and Defender of Argus in between the two.
For 2 mana! Yeah. Or 4 mana, I guess, in that case. 2 with a Sunfury Protector.
Yep.
So yeah, felt awful. Last one, Master of Disguise used to be, I'm going to read this one because not a lot of people played this card. It's a rare rogue minion, 4 cost, 4 attack, 4 health, reads Battlecry, give a friendly minion stealth. And just emphasis, that means permanently until you decide to do something with it. Now, same stats, but it reads Battlecry, give a friendly minion stealth until your next turn. This one was a little bit of a surprise. I think we kind of got so a surprise in the sense where this is a card that's not already really actively played, and yet people knew that it was going to be nerfed. And is that a better way to say it?
Yes.
Okay. Jeez, sure. I just got I thought I was spinning around on a carnival ride or something. I saw JR and Kevin's heads shake so fast. Where it was it's a strong card. It didn't get seen played, and maybe that's why it was a little bit surprising to people, but obviously drastically limited design space as far as what we could see coming up in with new cards and new abilities and new effects. Makes perfect sense. Yeah, that's about all I got to say. What do you guys think?
I think they've been talking about this forever. I think they actually basically advocated this change themselves back before they made the original change to Warsong Commander. They've been saying forever that this is a problem card. It creates design limitations that suck. They've even come out and said already that the reason that Animated Armor was a mage card and not a neutral card was because of this card. It's a known quantity that has had bad influences on design decisions and prevented Blizzard from doing a lot of things that otherwise would have been really cool. I'm really glad. I mean, you're right. No one played it. It's not like it was the end of the world, but no one played it because none of those broken interactions made it into the game because Blizzard knew they couldn't. So giving people the ability now to maybe play it or to put cards out that will be good for Rogue because they can't put permanent stealth on them is fine. And I think this is it's one of the most obvious changes, needed to be made a long time ago. This was just the time and the place to get it done.
JR, closing thoughts on our nerfs.
That's pretty much it. You guys said it all for this card. The only thing I would say beyond that is the exact same reason that Kevin was saying that, they've been talking about this nerf for a long time because of design decisions. The same thing can apply to Freeze Mage, because there are a lot of cards they said that they could design, but Freeze Mage would completely break it. But we saw no nerfs whatsoever with Freeze Mage. So Freeze Mage is going to be a deck that's going to last around forever and ever and ever in Hearthstone at this point.
Okay, we're going to move on in a second here, but I will, on the Freeze Mage subject, what I'll say is this. Initially, I was shocked because it seemed like when we went looking for cards that needed to be changed, we went looking for decks that could survive into Standard without cards from GVG and Nax. And if you looked at like a League of Explorers era Freeze Mage, you were generally looking at maybe losing Mad Scientist, and everything else stayed totally intact. All the other cards stayed in the deck and it was still playable. I actually think this is okay. I know people said like change Alexstrasza, nerf Ice Block, do all these things, but honestly, Freeze Mage is a very, very narrow style of deck. It beats very specific things. It gets horribly beaten by specific things. It actually has a really positive influence on the rotation of the metagame. I'm actually glad that this deck is still going to be playable, and I think what you're going to find is that in the absence of Mad Scientist, where Freeze Mage is forced to try and cheat secrets out using like Kirin Tor Mage or just play them, that it's not going to be as good anyway. A huge part of why it was so effective was because of Mad Scientist. So if its nerf is that it doesn't have Mad Scientist, the win rate goes down slightly. I think that's totally fine. I'm glad that the core concept of Freeze Mage didn't get deleted. I was advocating, honestly, I thought one of the cards they might look at was Frost Nova, but I think this is fine. Like, I think it's honestly good for the game that something like Freeze Mage exists and contests board flood decks.
Well, I agree. I was just basing it off the fact that you were saying that this card was preventing them from making certain cards down the road, when I've heard them specifically say the same about Freeze Mage preventing them from making certain cards, because there are cards that would be way too powerful for them if it was ever into... like, they couldn't make a neutral minion because it would be way too powerful for Freeze Mage, certain cards. That was my only point. Was the design. I mean, future design.
I would say try playing Freeze Mage without Mad Scientist, see how it feels, look at how much you lose, and realize that even if they put out something now that makes Freeze Mage ostensibly better in the late game, it probably doesn't matter because you're not going to get there.
Freeze Mage was good before Mad Scientist, though.
Yeah, but it was really good because of Mad Scientist. And rip Mad Scientist. So, John?
All right, let me break it up here, ladies, for a second. And so... yeah, Mad Scientist losing is hard. Something I would add to Kevin's point of, a combination, the combinations of things that make it not necessary to change Freeze Mage as much. I would also add is the high skill cap, especially with Mad Scientist being gone. Number one, it's an awful ladder deck in the sense that games take forever. So that's already kind of a nerf to the deck for most people. So you really see it when people really want to play Freeze Mage. They're probably going to be, fairly good at it, or in competitive play. And now that's going to be less so with Mad Scientist gone. It's hard to play. It kind of reminds me of like the current Patron Warrior right now. It's definitely good in certain metas, but there's definitely a finesse to it that goes beyond just the standard. A lot of decks you can put in a spreadsheet with the correct plays are to play, and with something like Freeze Mage you can't. And if you watch a skilled Freeze Mage play, you can't, especially when you're losing Mad Scientist. And so I think it makes sense. I definitely think that at the very least, Blizzard is postponing making any real choices to Freeze Mage to see what may or may not happen once this is removed. We still might see nerfs to it, but it's definitely not going to be any better than it was, and it didn't dominate the meta as is, and so I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. You bring up a good point that I would not actually be surprised if a year from now, when we have a new year of whatever and a new standard format, that we're going to see 10 more card nerfs. I think this was just their first go at it. And I would not be surprised at all to see more classic nerfs coming down the road in about a year.
I hope so. I hope that they continue to balance actively. I know it's something they said they wouldn't do until Standard was announced, and I hope they stick with it. I hope we keep seeing card changes that make the game healthier.
Yeah. All right, we're going to speed round our card reviews here because we still got card reviews to do, and we have 63 of them, so buckle in.
God.
I'm just kidding. We're not doing 63. We picked our 7 most influential nerfs that we thought it would be worth to talk about. We thought that we could add anything meaningful besides the other dozens of podcasts and streamers reviewing the same things. So hopefully you guys appreciate that. And let's talk about him. I'll go first. First up, we've got Doomcaller, new card announced. It was on the live stream. It's an 8 mana rare minion, 7 attack, 9 health, reads Battlecry, give your Cthulhu +2/+2 wherever it is. If it's dead, shuffle it into your deck. All right, I think this is a cool card. I think it's definitely very scary in Cthulhu decks, obviously, because that's really the only deck that this will work in. It is pretty high costed. It means that you're running a Doomcaller, which is 8 mana, a Cthulhu, which is 10 mana. That might be a little end of the curve heavy, but overall, I think this is a really cool card, and I think it's going to see some play. We're definitely going to see a lot of experimentation with it. We'll have to see if it ends up being a one-of to kind of help win those slower late games things, or if it is good enough and statted well enough that we'll see run 2. Kevin, what do you think?
I really like it. It's the first card we've ever really seen have a meaningful interaction with the graveyard in Hearthstone, and the ability to bring Cthulhu back after he's dead does mean that in theory you probably really only want to play this minion in a very late portion of the game when your Cthulhu has already come into play and then subsequently been destroyed. Being that it's not a legendary minion, you can play 2 of them, which ostensibly means that you could play Cthulhu 3 times in a non-rogue deck, because rogue really is the only class where people have bounced minions in the past. Obviously, you could play Cthulhu multiple times with like pandas and stuff, but I think this is cool because I think being able to get it back after it's died is something we've really never seen before, and not in a way that was controlled, right? We've seen stuff like Resurrect for Priest, but I really like this. I know the stat block is kind of like good but not great for 8 mana, but I think you're going to see people try to make this work, especially since everyone is getting Cthulhu for free. I think you're going to see people get this card because it's a rare, try to make a Cthulhu deck work, and try to use this to bring Cthulhu back. They'll try to build stall decks that allow them to play Cthulhu, have it get killed, play Cthulhu again, have it get killed, play Cthulhu again. I would not be mad if I lost to Cthulhu number 3 because I didn't adequately handle this particular strategy. I think that's okay. JR, what do you think?
I'm very lukewarm about this card. I'm definitely not as excited about it as you guys are. The only thing that makes it viable in my mind is the fact that it does already buff Cthulhu. It's not solely a return Cthulhu from the dead. And the reason why I'm not, I like that mechanic. I think it's a cool mechanic. But the reason why I'm not excited about it is Cthulhu is already your win condition. And if Cthulhu dies, all it does is shuffle it back in your deck. If it returned it to your hand, that would be really good. But it just shuffles it back in your deck.
Double win conditions. What's wrong with double? I run double Force of Nature Savage Roar. At that point, not anymore,
if you haven't won with the first Cthulhu, you're probably not going to win. So I'm lukewarm.
I think in control metas though, it could be really good. I really do think.
Against control decks, it very well could be to try to prevent to try to help you prevent fatigue damage, basically.
I don't know, man. I think
massive
Doomcaller freeze Cthulhu Mage would like a word.
It's a mouthful though, so it won't happen.
We need a shorter name for it.
You got to market that a little bit better. Let's talk about this next one here. Hooded Acolyte. JR, take us through this one since you're so in love with Cthulhu decks right now.
Yeah, so Hooded Acolyte is a priest card, 4 mana, 3 attack, 6 health, with the ability whenever a character is healed, give your Cthulhu +1/+1 wherever it is. This is a really good priest card in general, just because for 4 mana, 3/6 is pretty good. just by itself, look at Water Elemental for Mage, with the added bonus of this with like Circle of Healing or anything like that makes it a really good card for any kind of Priest Cthulhu deck. So if you're playing Priest Cthulhu, this is a must-have in general, and I really dig it. What do you think, John?
I think it's super strong. I think it's definitely must have in Cthulhu decks, especially on turn 4. What are you really doing on turn 4 for Priest? I mean, basically what
Soul
you
Priest,
have.
that's it.
Yeah, Soul Priest, Circle kind of stuff, like kind of dumb things. So I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, the other minions to drop into the 4th slot are what, Taz Dingo and Yeti and other things like that. So absolutely, if you're going to play a Cthulhu deck, you're going to put 2 of these in your deck. You're going to have a heck of a time removing it. It's going to be annoying, and they might get +1, +2, +3, +4 out on their Cthulhu before you do that. Get rid of it, because it is that 6 health on turn 4, especially on curve, is a pain in the butt to deal with. Probably less as good later in the game, but especially for early to mid game minions, this is a really good card. Kev.
I mean, keep in mind too that Cthulhu has the Twilight Darkmender, which if your Cthulhu has at least 10 attack, restore 10 health to your hero, and that's a 5-mana minion for Priest. And so this card is really going to help you really quickly get your Cthulhu up above that 10 attack.
Yeah, I think this card is pretty much one of the reasons that everyone is looking at Priest as being among the best Cthulhu classes right now. 3/6 for 4, like JR said, we've only ever seen done once before, and that was on Water Elemental. Otherwise, that's a stat block that you're usually paying 5 for to get something silly like, I don't even remember what a 3/6 for 5 is off the top of my head. I know there's been a couple. Thunderbluff Valiant, I guess. Like it's not a stat block that you see a lot of. It's definitely one that's tough to remove. To get 6 damage done, you're basically looking at hard removal in like the sense that you assassinate, deadly shot, whatever, or you're looking at fireball. There's no other way to deal 6 damage and get this thing off the board. Certainly not on curve. And you're already doing so much to try to heal as Priest, to trigger your draw engine, to trigger buffs to Holy Champion, which I guess is one of the other 4 drops you might see come about again now that Shredder is gone. I think this is a very powerful card. I think you're going to see this played in basically every Cthulhu Priest deck, and I do think it's neat that we're getting really like non-standard stat blocks like this, because it's the only 3/6 for 4 other than Water Elemental they've ever printed. That's cool.
Fen Creeper
Is 5, isn't it?
Is it 5?
I think it's 5.
Were we talking about for 4 stat blocks?
Yeah.
Oh man,
talking about
I'm
3/6
typing.
for 4.
Sorry.
I think it's just Water Elemental. I think it's the only one.
Oh, because you said Thunderbolt or Thunderbluff Valiant earlier.
I think
but
there's
that's-
but it's for 5 as well.
I
Got it.
think there's a 3/6 dragon as well.
Only if you get the buff.
Only if you
on,
have the buff.
Twilight
yeah,
Guardian,
it's a good call though. Technically, that's true.
Yeah.
Oh, I thank everybody for listening to our podcast, for remembering cards that we're not actively talking about, because we are definitely grade A at doing that.
None of us are ever going to win Hearthstone Trivial Pursuit, okay?
No.
That's fine.
No, we will never win Jeoparino, that's for sure.
Not
All
a
right,
chance.
Evolve. JR. No, not JR. Kevin, it's your turn. Tell us about Evolve.
Sure. So this is a very cool card. I think this is something people are really excited about. Evolve is a 1-cost rare shaman spell that reads transform your minions into random minions that cost 1 more. I think there's a typo on the one we have up on the screen here, but it's all minions. All the minions you have in play will get turned into a random minion of 1 higher cost. If you've got a decent sized board as a shaman, this is super powerful. It synergizes incredibly well with your hero power. There's very few times where you're going to go up a mana cost and get something worse. And ostensibly, this would also be super useful at the end of your turn after you've done all your trading and all your minions are damaged. Then you throw out an Evolve and you eliminate all the damage on all of your minions and get something better in every single one of those cases where a minion has survived. This card has people freaked out that Shaman could be one of the scariest, most powerful classes in the game after Old Gods comes out. And I think that's a legitimate fear. I think Shaman has gotten a ton of very powerful tools, and a lot of the things that suppressed Shaman up until this point are going away. There's not a lot of things that will be really, really good against Shaman that we can see right now, at least. Now, I mean, for the record, every expansion we do this, we're like, yeah, finally, Shaman's going to be really good. This card, in and of itself, is very good. We don't know if it's enough yet for Shaman. JR.
It's I would say it's the best card that Shaman has right now. And it's just a really good card. If you can change all of your totems to 2 mana minions now. The only thing to be careful about that, though, is with standard, there is actually a really large chance that those 1 mana totems that you've been playing with your 2 mana hero power could turn into a Doomsayer. Like, I want to say a 7 or 8% chance. So you got to be a little bit careful with your 1 mana minions and turn them into 2 mana. It could definitely backfire very quickly. I know there's a lot of people excited about this with Onyxia, because you can basically get an Old God or the Big Drag Deathwing with it, and then a bunch of 2 mana minions, but it would feel really bad if one of those turns into Doomsayer. So it's something to be a little bit careful with, but in general, it is a really good card for Shaman, and it could be a game changer for Shaman as well.
All right, I'm going to play devil's advocate here because there's too much agreeing going on in this podcast. I'm going to lower the mic so we can really focus in. So, yes, all valid points, gentlemen. Well done. Very astute. Good job. You guys get gold stars. You can come back next week and guest on the show. So, that'll all be great. Counterpoint here. If I have enough minions on the board to make this viable, am I not already winning pretty handily? And is it worth the potential to lose that through some worse minions by playing this card?
Absolutely it is. Like I said earlier, right? I mean, this is not going to go into an overload Shaman deck. It's not going to go into an aggro Shaman deck. There's going to be a very specific style of deck where this is playable. And it's going to probably be the kind of deck where you want to get a whole bunch of stuff on the board very quickly, where you want to play cards that summon multiple minions at flexible costs, all those sorts of things. I don't see a world in which you wouldn't use the minions you have on the board to trade favorably, because there's lots of stuff in Shaman that has high health, low attack. Get the advantage of having cleared your opponent's board and have a bunch of injured minions left over, and then toss out a 1 mana spell that's going to replace all of them with a higher cost minion. And you'd have to sit and actually run the math, because I don't even know how you would do the calculations, but I'm pretty sure that on the balance, with a few very specific exceptions where there's cards that really suck to get, you don't want to upgrade your decent 1-drop into a jeweled scarab or whatever, but on the balance, you're almost always going to get a better minion for a higher cost, and it's going to be a minion that's at full health, maybe even gets to act. Maybe you summon a minion that has charge on top of a minion that you've played already that didn't have charge. Like, there's no world where this isn't awesome. It's a very specific set of synergies that you have to play to. I think this is a build-around card for Shaman in a way that we haven't seen in any non-totem style deck that Blizzard has ever given us as Shaman.
Yep. I will say, and so I totally agree. Again, devil's advocate here. We need to bring fresh perspectives. Right now, if let's say for whatever reason, aggro Shaman ends up being, again, the only really good Shaman deck, like, I don't think this is that good, because you're aggroing and you're not really having to worry about healing minions and things like that, because if they're not going to attack into your minion if they can't kill it. So the ability to heal it is not super important. There's a lot better burn that you can put in. But on the whole, especially for mid-range and control Shaman, absolutely a great card. If it's something that you can design around a little bit and ends up being more valuable than the other things you can do. Definitely going to see a lot of experimentation with it. We're definitely going to see a lot of people try it and play it when it first comes out. I worry, and Kevin said at the beginning, I worry that it ends up being quickly forgotten for cards that have much more apparent immediate value. But we'll have to see. We will definitely have to see. Next card.
Yeah.
Next
I think
card.
you said everything there was to say there.
All right, we've got some legendaries to talk about here, and GR, go ahead and take it.
What's the next one? I don't see it on the screen yet.
Anomalous.
All right, so Anomalous is the mage legendary. It's 8 mana, 8 attack, 6 health, with the ability to Death Rattle, deal 8 damage to all minions. Once again, I think I wrote these cards up when I was seeing them on the stream, and I think I forgot to type minions instead of minion, or the other way around, I should say. But anyway, this card, it's one of those cards where I'm a little lukewarm to, but it also has the potential to be pretty good in certain situations. I could see this getting played in a freeze mage style deck, where on turn 6 you Blizzard, turn 7 you Flame Strike, turn 8 you play this card, turn 9 you Alexstrasza. And for just keeping like board control through that 6 through 9 spot, and then having 2 big minions on 8 and 9 to deal with will likely win you the game at that point. And I can see it played in that. For anything else, it's a card that when you play, it's awkward for your opponent to deal with. But other than that, I'm just not that excited about the card itself.
Okay. Kev, what do you think?
I really like it. I think it's interesting in the sense that for Mage, if you look at the 8 cost minions in the game that are playable in Standard, this is basically going to kill all of them, even if you don't trade. The only things that would survive not trading would be stuff like Eldritch Horror, which I don't think is going to see a ton of play. Tyrion, if it still has Divine Shield, or like Grom, and everything else has that 8 or less health at this point and dies. So as the non-mage player, you have to clear this before you do anything, which means if you have an existing board, that sucks. If you try to play around it, the mage player is going to trade with it, be able to hit it with their own spells or whatever to basically have an incredible board wipe available to them at any time, or an 8/6 minion that, because you didn't trade and wanted to keep your own board, is now dealing 8 damage to your face. So the 6 health point might be a little low for a minion at this point, but really when you look at how powerful that Death Rattle effect is, I don't know that you care. I don't know that you care that your opponent threw down a Ragnaros and you threw this down in answer and said, all right, let's see what happens. If you go face, I go face, or I can trade and wipe everything else that you ever put into play. It's like having a Doomsayer built into your 8 mana legendary that you're going to get probably decent value out of either way. So I don't know. I like it. I think it's a neat card. I don't know if it's super playable. I don't expect to see it on a day-to-day basis, but conceptually, I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, the weak part of this card is obviously the 6 mana, or the 6 health, as well as the fact that it does it to all minions. But it also does guarantee that unless your opponent already has enough damage on the board when you play this, it also guarantees that your opponent's going to start with a weak or totally absent board. And that's definitely a really big advantage for this card. It really depends on if it's too high costed. I think that really comes down to is, at 8 mana for a 6 health minion and losing your board. Like, I don't think you would ever play this in something like a Tempo Mage. Obviously not Mech Mage because it's gone, but like in Wild or something like that. But maybe you would play it more in like a Freeze Mage. Maybe even a Grinder Mage. Maybe. I don't think so. But there are definitely ways with the powerful spells that you would maybe try to do something like that. Overall, meh. It's a cool concept. The question is, can it be built around? Yeah. Let's talk about the next one here. Fandral Staghelm. It's a 4 mana druid legendary, 3 attack, 5 health. Reads, your choose 1 cards have both effects combined. Love this card. Think it's great. Druid already runs a lot of these cards anyway, and there's a lot of those that it doesn't run simply because on one or the other, it's not that great. But even imagine like a Nourish turn 4 and then turn 5, you draw 3 cards and get 2 mana crystals. Like there's some really cool synergies with this one. And so I'm a big fan. Only weakness is you're only able to run 1. So, the consistency of getting it early kind of sucks. But I think it's still a really cool card. I think we'll see some play, and people will definitely try to make this one work. JR, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you're going to see this in Ramp Mage, or Ramp Druid. Why did I say Mage? Ramp Druid. I could see this, getting out like turn 2, you coin maybe Wild Growth if you have a good 3-drop, or you wait till turn 2 and do Wild Growth, and turn 3 drop this. And then turn 5 Nourish will be insane. But there's a lot of really good cards that go with this. Just almost any of them really, but some of the ones off the top of my head, which I think provide pretty insane value, is Wrath, Nourish, Raven Idol, and Druid of the Claw even. All of those are really good, and I definitely see this getting played in a ramp style Druid, if anything.
Kev?
I love this card. I think it's one of my favorites out of the new set. I think this is, again, something that's going to push Druid players to do something new and different. They no longer have just mid-range into combo, run all the standard things you would run. And there are a lot of cards, that don't necessarily see play right now that would be super good if you could play them on the back of Fandral. So if Fandral sticks, and at 3-5 for 4, we've seen lots of other 3-5 for 4 cards that tend to stick, right? Like Elise and stuff like that tend to stick. They tend to survive if you play them on curve. So you'd be able to get at least one application out, or you could hold it until you could set up a very powerful combo turn. But like wrathing something for 4 damage and drawing a card for 2 mana is crazy. Being able to play Feral Rage, the new Druid spell, and get 4 attack and 8 armor for 3 mana is insane. That value is indescribable. Normally, you'd be paying 3 mana to get the 8 armor with Ice Barrier as a triggered effect, or to get a weapon out that could do 4 damage or something like that. That's a crazy powerful thing. You already touched on Nourish. Druid of the Claw is going to be a 4/6 taunt with charge. Druid of the Flame, no one plays right now, honestly. Some people tried for a while. It's kind of like a weird anti-zoo thing. But I'm pretty sure that the established result of playing Druid of the Flame behind Fandral is you get a 5/5 for 3, which is super, super good. Like, that's better than Overload good.
Muckla without the drawback.
Right, yeah. Ancient of War will be a 10/10 taunt for 7 mana. That's absurd. Like, there's so many things that would be so good behind this card. I think the biggest fear would honestly be people would try to hold it for too long to try to set up a big combo rather than just getting the body on the board. But at 3/5 for 4, it's a good tempo play too if you have to. So there's no drawback. I don't see a world in which this isn't run in most Druid decks, and people will specifically try to build to it as soon as they have a copy of it. I love it. I love the card.
Cool. All right, let's talk about Malkarok here. Kevin, you're up.
Yeah, so Malkarok is the new warrior legendary. It's a 7 mana, 6 attack, 5 health minion that reads Battlecry, equip a random weapon. So this is a less worse Blingtron. It doesn't give your opponent a weapon. 6/5 for 7 doesn't sound really great. You'd really like to get that for maybe like 5 in a perfect world. Realistically, a little more than 5 was probably what you would be paying to get a minion with that kind of body out. But a random weapon, odds are like the majority of the weapons in the game cost 2, 3, 4 mana. There's very few weapons that have honestly like legitimate drawbacks. So you're not really worried unless you get, is it Cursed Blade? The really bad one. Outside of that, you're pretty happy to get any weapon at all out of playing this. I don't see necessarily a huge drawback here. I think maybe people will choose not to run it because there's better things they can do on turn 7. But in general, I like the design. John, what do you think?
I mean, just thinking off the top of my head, there's not a whole lot of weapons that cost less than 2 mana, right? Let's just say hypothetically that's true. There's like that 1/3, I think, is 1 mana maybe. But everything else is at least 2. So essentially, very worst case scenario, you're playing Malkarok for 5 mana and getting the crappiest weapon for 2, essentially. And best case scenario, you're getting something for more. So a 5 mana 6/5 is pretty good, and that's just about almost always the worst case scenario, right? So I think it really just comes down to if, to Kevin's point, if 7 is too crowded with better costed, more consistent, more valuable minions for whatever type of warrior we're running. As it sits now, though, I think it's cool. I think it could definitely see play. JR.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely see play. The chances of you getting a good or awesome weapon is like something like greater than 50%, really. And the chances of you getting a bad weapon is Curse Blade, which is a fairly low percent considering all the weapons in the game right now. So I think it's going to see play. I think where I see it getting played is something like a Tempo Warrior. It would actually be really good in there where you drop your 7 mana minion and then you get a weapon on top of it. You get some really good tempo going with that. It has potential to see it in Control Warrior, but I think in Control Warrior I would still rather play the name escapes me all of a sudden, Gorehowl. I would still rather just play Gorehowl straight up. Or it might even compete with Baron Geddon, but I think I would still rather play Baron Geddon. But in a Temple Warrior style deck, I think it would do very good and would see play in there.
All right, so just out of simple curiosity, I ran the math real fast while you guys were chatting. In Standard, there will be 20 weapons that are eligible to come out from Malkarok. Only 2 of them at 1 cost. Across the 20, if you were to take a midpoint average, it would be 3.5. There are 10 weapons at 4, 5, or 7 cost total, and there are 10 weapons at 1, 2, or 3 cost. So statistically, on average, you're likely to get a weapon that's worth 3.5 mana. And the most common points are 3 mana and 5 mana, because there's 5 weapons on each of those slots that you could get. Now, they're not all awesome. Maybe you draw Sword of Justice or Tentacle for Arms or something you don't want. But I mean, there's a strong likelihood that you are pulling out a good weapon that you want out of this. The only drawbacks I can think of would be if you get something like Charged Hammer and you didn't want to lose armor up as your hero power or something like that. But in general, this is a good card. You're going to get a 5 mana minion and a 3.5 mana weapon for 7 mana. So almost always on the balance, this is going to be a positive tempo play.
Cool. All right, let's talk about this last one here. Twin Emperor Veclor. JR, is it your turn? I think it is.
Sure. So Twin Emperor Veclor is a 7 mana legendary. He's 4 attack, 6 health. He has taunt with the battle cry. If your Cthulhu has at least 10 attack, summon another Emperor. And I think this card alone is what's going to end up making Cthulhu decks really, really shine. This card, it's going to be easy to get your attack up to Cthulhu to begin with. If you're playing a Cthulhu deck, you get a taunt, and you get another guy who is also, I'm trying to find the token here,
He's
who also
4/6.
He's the same thing. He's a 4/6 taunt as well. So you get, for 7 mana, you get 2 4/6s with taunt. You play him on turn 7. Turn 8, if you're playing, you can play something like Ancient Harbinger, which at the start of your turn, put a 10 mana cost minion from your deck into your hand, so you can go ahead and get Cthulhu in your hand there on turn 8. And then very difficult to deal with the 2 4/6 taunts. Protect your Cthulhu a little bit, play your Cthulhu. I think this is going to be a very popular card in Cthulhu decks, and is what is going to make Cthulhu decks good. I also think because of it, you're going to see a lot of tech starting to come up with the Black Knight. Not only this card, but other cards in this set as well.
Kev.
Yeah, I mean, JR hit all the high points. I think getting 8/12 for 7 is absurd. It's one of the best possible plays in the game. It is contingent on the combo variable of getting your Cthulhu buffed up sufficiently, but by the time you've got this playable, whether that's on curve at turn 7 or more likely later in the game than that, it's very unlikely that if you're running a Cthulhu-themed deck, you're not going to have gotten enough buffs to pull that off. Cthulhu starts at what, 6/6? So you need probably like 2 Battlecry buffs,
2 to
almost
3,
nothing,
yeah.
right? Almost nothing to get to a point where you get this benefit. I imagine JR's right. This is a card that everyone will want in every Cthulhu deck. 6 health is a breakpoint that's hard to remove. There's very little, even in the way of sweepers in the game, that can actually clear a board that has a 6 health minion on it, let alone 2 of them, right? I mean,
Safe
what
against
can you...
Priest, too.
Yeah, there's almost nothing you can really do that answers this outside of like Twisting Nether. I think the safety of this play is just way more powerful than people have given it credit for. This is probably what's honestly going to facilitate Cthulhu, because Cthulhu himself is not a straight up win condition in a lot of cases, and people will have some kind of answer generally in their decks to Cthulhu being played once. So maybe Doomcaller becomes relevant, who knows? But getting these guys out at some point where you just on one turn can slap down 2, 4, 6 bodies and do something else if it's later in the game, I have no idea how you're supposed to answer that. And the fact that they're taunts is just icing on the cake. Like, that protects whatever else you might have in play or that you want to put out in play alongside them. This is a super good card.
Yeah, I mean, the only drawback to this card really is if your Cthulhu is not at 10-10, right? Which, if you're at turn 7 and your Cthulhu's not 10-10 already, you've got bigger problems,
right,
to handle. So, all in all, great card. I think it's a great card to end on for the week. We didn't do too bad for time. A little over an hour and a half for that. So good job, guys. We covered a lot in that amount of time. Yeah. What else do we need to hit here? Is there something else I'm missing? Or are we ready? I think we got to get out of here. Yeah, we do.
I think it's time to go.
All right. Boom. There it is. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us on the show. Before we jump into all the closing stuff, we do want to thank our friends of the show, Sean G, Martin Z, and Albert T. If you like this show, want to support it, head over to patreon.com/wellmedpodcast. Take a look at the tiers that we have and hop on board. We're always hanging out and talking in Discord and Facebook and things like that. So you should definitely come hang out. Emails. We got some really good emails, but naturally a completely packed show means that we didn't get to them this week. But we are actually talking today, and we're actually going to do, probably after Standard hits, a show just dedicated to your guys' questions. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, let's jump into iTunes reviews. JR, take it away.
Yeah, so we had a couple iTunes reviews in the USA. Thank you, Evium and Minion 1390 for those 5-star reviews. If you would like to be like these two and get a shout out on next week's show, head over to iTunes, do a search for the Well Met podcast, type in like Hearthstone, we'll pop right up pretty easily, and leave a review there. It helps us out a ton, and we'll thank you for leaving one. Also, we're on Google Play, the Google Play podcast now too.
Yes,
which I don't think they have a review system, but
they don't.
If you listen to on the Android, we are definitely on there. Or if you use the Google product, we're on there, and it's actually a pretty sweet little setup. I like it.
They did a really good setup for it. I don't know if it'll replace Overcast for me, but still I think very well done. Also, small little celebration note. Overall, through all the different regions, we have surpassed 100 5-star reviews. So, good job, guys. Thank you guys so much. We're so glad that you like the show. I think we're only the 3rd Hearthstone podcast to do that. So that's super humbling. Thank you guys so much. And super exciting for us. All right, let's go ahead and do some shout outs. Kev, I'll let you take it away.
For sure. It's been a crazy week. I wish I had more to say, but moving and getting set up in my new place has been just my whole life. So if you didn't get a chance to check them out, you can find pictures of my new place up on Twitter. It was really cool. Yeah, really glad that I got all the help I did getting set up over here. My new internet connection is flawless, and it's looking like I'm going to be able to start streaming. So I'm working with Dread Scythe from Scythe Designs, who does all of our vector work here on the show, to help me out get some stream overlays put together so I can maybe start doing some streaming for you guys this week. Let me know. Just hit me up on Twitter or whatever. Let me know what games you'd like to see, what times would be good for you, so I can kind of plan a schedule for that. And I do have, hopefully, one very other cool announcement coming up later this week. Project I've been working on at work that I'm really excited about. So by the time we record next week's show, talking about all of the crazy decks we're playing in Whispers of the Old Gods, I hope to have something interesting and totally unrelated to Well Met to share with you guys.
Nice. JR, what about you, man?
I want to give a shout out to both Kevin and John for all the work that they have been doing on the show lately, especially John with the new factories he put together on the show today. I know how busy he's been, and for him to put that together has been really awesome. I also want to give a shout out to all of our listeners out there who came and hung out with us in the chat room, even 15 minutes late because of my computer problems that I was having, and was still super awesome in the chat room, and all you guys who listen to on the podcast, and all you guys that send the emails and tweet at us and all that. You guys are awesome. Love you all.
And for sure, guys, if you are an audio listener, if you normally just download the show and check it out that way, take the time, look up the stuff that John has put together for the video show. Hit hearthstone.blizzpro.com and look at the YouTube video there, or subscribe to BlizzPro on YouTube and check it out that way. The stuff that we're doing, all the cool things we got coming for you guys is totally unreal. John is knocking it out of the park on that stuff, and it's a really exciting time. The show is looking better every day.
Thanks, guys. Checks in the mail, so I appreciate
We appreciate it.
As for me, huge shout outs. I am just about done with my semester. Everything's going well, so I can breathe again, which has been great. I was really stressing out. So that first and foremost. Second, I signed a lease on an apartment and got a great deal on it, and I'm going to be moving in at the first of this month. But I'm also going to have this place, and I'm honestly, guys, I spent 2 weeks, looked at dozens of places, talked to dozens of people on the phone about them. Guess where I'm moving?
Right next door,
downstairs and down the hall. So
yeah, that's what happens, isn't it?
But it's great. I'm gonna have my own place. I'm gonna have a dedicated room just for the studio. So we're gonna have a lot of cool things that we're gonna be able to do with that. I think that we're going to do a post-show stream tonight. Not necessarily Kevin and JR. I know you guys are busy. Maybe Kevin, you're not. I don't know. I know JR, you're always busy Sunday nights. But we're thinking about doing, I think Katie and I are going to do a co-stream tonight and have Katie give her reactions to the new Nerfs that came out, so we could get Katie's thoughts on all the Nerfs. It'll be really fun. So stay tuned for that, probably about 20-30 minutes after the show. Twitch.tv/kicktripod. I'm going to be streaming a lot more once this semester finishes up. So yeah. Well, that's it for us this week. You can tune in together with your friends live every Sunday on twitch.tv/BlizzPro at 7 p.m. Pacific, or find us on your favorite podcast outlets. So for updates throughout the week, follow us on Twitter at WellMedPodcast. And WellMed is entirely supported by our fans. Find out more at patreon.com/WellMedPodcast. We also have merch at store.blizzpro.com. I'm wearing my shirt again tonight, just to represent. And as always, a big thank you to Jake Buttineau at jakebuttineau.ca for our music, and Scythe Designs for working with us for our graphics. Thank you again for joining us for episode 58 of Well Met. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Well Met is a production of BlizzPro.com. The show records live at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time at twitch.tv/BlizzPro. To get the latest news and information about the show, follow us on Twitter at Well Met Podcast, or join us on our subreddit at reddit.com/r/WellMetPodcast. If you would like to support the show, you can find out how at patreon.com/WellMetPodcast.
Cash.